Hello, it's Ren Presents time. I'm your host, Ren, and today we continue with the Hazards of the Old Ones Part 2, Chapter 6 already, Lieutenant Carbomier. Last week, we see Carahill trying to convince Lieutenant Kylos to come with him on a mission of some sort. He's vague about the details, he's vague about where he wants her to go, and he's even more vague about what they're going to do when they get there. He psychoanalyzes the exhausted Lieutenant Kylos, tells her that her current predicament as being out of the Marines and just a civilian, which she absolutely hates, is entirely her fault. She had blamed it on her husband, saying he wants me to come home, he's always whining, yada yada yada. Carahill psychoanalyzed her, says, well, you were feeling left out and a bit jealous now that Captain Davidge is with his Countess Sig and the old days are gone. There's no more Kai and Captain Davidge just hanging out as best buddies. That's all over. Kai is far from kicked out of the group. She is squarely part of the group, but she liked things the way they were. Just her and Captain Davidge, just buddies, sailing the stars together. And then she would go home on select occasions and totally smash with her husband. But those were unusual. Those were rare. Carahill tells her she wanted Captain Davidge to beg her, just please don't go, Kai, stay. But of course he didn't do that, even though he made it plain that he would miss her and anyone else would be just to settle for. And as Kai sinks into bed, she's like, well, you know, where are we going? Where do you want to go? And Carahill says south. And she's like, okay, fine. And, you know, in the moment I start recording, that's when my dogs start barking. I don't quite get it. It's just maybe like a magic sort of thing. But anyways, this week we move to Chapter 6 already, Lieutenant Carbomier. And as Carahill speculated, now that Kai is out and the first officer job aboard the Seeker is available, there are lots of people vying to take that spot. The Seeker is a prominent ship. To be the first officer on that ship would be a big thing, would open a lot of doors. And the Marine Corps, the Stellar Marines that Kai was a part of, were usually the downtrodden second fiddle before you get the Stellar Fleet are at the top, and way back down are the Marines, and they don't get the amount of prestige or respect that the fleet does. But having Kai as the first officer helped out in that area a little bit. So this week we see the Stellar Marines take their first step in trying to install another Marine on the Seeker. We'll see how that goes. I'm kind of in a quandary because this chapter is very short. It's only 3 or 4 pages long. Normally, in such instances, I would just read 2 chapters, read the next chapter after this one. But that one is fairly long, at being over 15 pages. So this reading would then be well over an hour, probably about an hour and a half long. And I don't think any of us really want to endure that. So we'll just have to keep this one short. And then next week, we'll have a longer chapter. In any event, let's proceed immediately to see what shakes loose here. Part 2, Chapter 6, Lieutenant Carbomier. Dav, I'm sick of you going into your office and not letting me in, Sig said in their quarters after daybell. She poured herself a cup of coffee and sat down next to him on the couch. She had removed her gown and was down to her petticoat and undergarments. She jammed her feet into his ribs. You know you can't be in there, and I'm discussing ship's destination. Those are the regulations. Well, I thought you made up the regulations. In some cases I do, but not in this one. The fleet regs are plain. It's supposed to prevent tampering and corruption. Sig jabbed him with her feet again and then snuggled up next to him. This was his favorite part of the day, to just sit and relax with his wife. Well, I don't care, she said. It's not like I'm going to know what you're talking about anyway. Sig wrapped herself around him. As she often did, she slid her soft feet into the interior of his boots and rubbed them down to his ankles. Dav's boots, big and rather oversized in the fleet tradition, were large enough to accommodate his leg and both of Sig's to some extent. The big fleet boots were based off the old Falloon-style boots of long ago. Rain catchers, the Marines called them. They wore smaller, leg-fitting broussards. Well, you could be an enemy spy, Sig, he said, laughing. Yes, Dav, I'm a Zaffin spy. I'm in so deep I even married my Mark, got pregnant with his child, have wonderful sex with him several times a day, and have to wear his clothes to boot. Is that all? No, that's not all. The spy fell madly in love. It's only for a few minutes and only every so often. Why does it bother you so much? Because it does. Sig put her cup down and sighed. I suppose I'll need to apologize to you now, Dav. Why is that, Sig? Because I feel it coming on. Davidge became a bit apprehensive. Feel what coming on? Sig smiled. The rush! It's just my body adapting to being pregnant. 1.5 years is a long time, and my body has to ready itself for nurturing our son. The downside of that is my emotions might be a little out of whack for a while. I was reading about it a few days ago in some literature Inez gave to me. I must admit, Davidge said, I've not spent a lot of time around pregnant women previously, other than my sister, Pardock, when she was pregnant with her children. Though her emotions seemed no more out of sorts than normal. You mean you might be feeling a little moody from time to time? I'd think that's only natural. Moody's part of it, Sig said. I'd say it's more like hypersensitive and needy, and a bit erratic as well. I might do some strange things, and my temper might be a tad short. I might be pretty clingy as well. Just remember that I love you. Davidge embraced her. Well, that's fine, darling. Maybe that's why you think you saw Admiral Sy getting hit with a pie. Well, I didn't think that, Dav. I saw that. I didn't see a thing, and you know me. I see everything. Sig smiled and ran her hands up his chest. Well, maybe you're getting a little soft. She then hauled back and slugged him in the stomach. Oops, she said. Did somebody just slug you? How long will this erratic behavior last, do you think? He asked, astonished. The whole time, from here on out, Sig said happily. The whole 1.5 years. Davidge reached down and felt Sig's belly. She put her hand over his. How's he doing? He's fine, Dav. He's gonna be a lovely, handsome boy. She put her coffee cup down and began kissing his neck. Let's start practicing for our next child. You want another boy or a girl? How about a girl? Kylos. We'll name her Kylos. Sig continued working his neck. Lady Kylos of Blanchford. Sounds good to me. I miss her. I wish she hadn't left. Me too. But I think she needed to work something out, Sig. Her husband, he didn't pressurize her any more than normal. I could tell it in her face. I think she was conflicted with something she'll need to work out on her own. Your sight tell you that? Yes, it did. I only hope she's not regretting her decision right now. To take such a drastic step, to lose her situation. I hope it's worth it to her. Just remember, it's not goodbye. We'll be seeing her often. The comm rang in. Sir, I have a message for you from Stellar Marine Command. Lieutenant Carbomier standing by. Davidge shrugged. Aye, comm, I'll take it here. He stood up and kissed Sig. It looks like the Marines are wasting no time casting their bones for a replacement for Kai. They seem rather keen on it. Sig trotted over to the far side of the room. Am I off screen, love? Davidge walked over to his terminal and punched up the comm header. Yes, darling, you're fine where you are. Sig winked at him and sat down. She created a rack of Silvertech 10 pins at the far end of the room and a shimmering silver bowling ball in her hand. She took position and readied them to line up for a shot. Sig, don't you dare bowl that ball. This is going to be a long year and a half, Davidge mused. He hit the switch, and Lieutenant Carbomier popped up. A smiling, handsome fellow, his red marine uniform was as neatly trimmed and pressed as Kylos used to be. Captain Davidge, well met, sir. I am sorry for the hour. It's quite all right, Lieutenant. Greetings. What can I do for you? Sir, we here in Marine Command... The Silvertech bowling ball sped across the floor behind Davidge, skittering a little on the rises in the carpeting, and crashed into the 10 pins with a massive tumult. Lieutenant Carbomere heard the noise and was distracted. Davidge glanced over. Strike? Not bad. The lieutenant continued. Wish to offer our most sincere apologies regarding the untimely and sudden departure of Lieutenant Kylos as your standing first officer. We certainly hope that you are not overly offended or inconvenienced, and we assure you that the matter has been promptly dealt with. Promptly dealt with, Lieutenant? Lieutenant Kylos was, without question, one of the finest officers I have ever had the pleasure of serving with, and I fully understand her pressing personal need to return to her home. I'm curious, just how has this matter been dealt with, as you put it? Davidge didn't need to ask. He could guess. Kai was probably dressed down, stripped of her uniforms, de-drummed, and kicked out in short order, and if she managed to be out-processed as anything more than a private, he'd be surprised. The lieutenant shuffled uncomfortably. Sir, I only meant that her immediate wishes were attended to in short order, to speed her transition to... Lieutenant, I will be speaking to Madame Kylo shortly, and if I hear that she was treated with anything but the utmost courtesy and respect due to any long-serving officer in good standing, if I hear that she was out-processed as anything but a lieutenant, and if I hear she was abandoned at dock in Blanchford Village, I will find that situation most unfavorable. Indeed, I will be quite annoyed. Again, the Marine looked like he'd been run over. Sir, I assure you, we will attend to her every need. She will lack for nothing as she makes her way to wherever she is going. She will always be a stellar Marine in our eyes. Davidge eyed him skeptically. Sig, forming a fresh Silvertech bowling ball, smiled. Well said, Dav. Stick it to him. Glad to hear it, Lieutenant. Carbomere cleared his throat and continued. Sir, I have been tasked by my command to relay you a message. Indeed. Please proceed. Sir, our command has been pleased that a Marine was selected as first officer of such an esteemed vessel of the line. Our command wishes to humbly submit to you a potential replacement, an officer whom we feel will serve with all the skill and professionalism you have come to expect. I see. I was hoping to promote from within, as I did with Kylos years ago. Though she was a Marine and I fleet, I considered her as one of my own. We were hoping... Behind Davidge, the Silvertech bowling ball again raced across the carpeting and crashed into the pins. God's bodkins, Captain, Carbomere said. Was that a bowling ball just now? Yes, it was. Lieutenant, please continue. He composed himself. We were hoping not to sway your decision, sir, but to simply make you aware of all possible options available, so that you can make the best choice possible. We are sending a Marine cutter to high noon of Baz. We were hoping at that time to have permission to come abeam, hail, and board. Will you grant a boarding? Davidge thought a moment. I will tell you after I have spoken with Madame Kylos regarding her treatment. Not before. Davidge out. With that, he cut the connection. Sig bounced up from her seat. Not nice, love, she said, throwing her arms around him. I suppose not, but I'll not reward them for ill-handling Kai. You really think they gave her a rough time of it? Oh, without question. Sig smiled. Speaking of Kylos, shouldn't we be practicing for creating the next Kylos? Lady Kylos of Blanchford? And they made love on the floor. And with that, we conclude Part 2, Chapter 6, Lieutenant Carbomier. So, Sig is pregnant, and pregnancies in the League are a little different than ours. If you have a gifted blue, which in this case we have, as Davidge is blue, Sig is also blue, and she's also a Shadow Tech female. So blues take a little longer to develop because of their gifts of the mind. So a normal blue usually takes about 1.5 years to gestate and then be born. Quite a bit longer than the standard 9 months that a Johnny, a commoner without the gifts of the mind would have. The people of the League are also genetically engineered to stay young and to not get sick, so that adds to the time a little bit as well. But usually 1.5 years for a blue is pretty normal. Now with Silver Tech, Shadow Tech in the mix, it can take a little longer. It can take 2 years to come out. And according to Sig's reading, elder women, as their pregnancy progresses, experience the rush where their emotions are erratic, their tempers are unpredictable, they get needy, clingy, they get angry, they get all of a sudden go into fits of laughter, they get a little crazy, and it's going to last until the pregnancy ends. And I got the idea for that for when me and my wife were trying to get pregnant years ago. We went and saw a fertility specialist. We were going to try the in vitro route, as the normal route wasn't really working for us. To get her ready to harvest her eggs, she was shot up with a daily cocktail of hormones. I don't like getting injections. I really don't like needles, but she was just getting shot up 4 or 5 times a day sometimes with vitamins and female hormones and other things. I don't know what they were, but she had like a little area in her abdomen marked with a ballpoint pen, stick here. And I would have to stick her with all kinds of needles. And I hated doing it, but she took it like a champ. But as these hormones and whatever other things they were injecting into her built up into her system, she just became really erratic. She was seeing conspiracies all around her. She was coming up with odd conclusions to things. She was seeing things that weren't there, in her head, metaphorically. All kinds of... She accused her father of not loving her, which is not the case at all. So I seen my wife behave in this manner. That's what gave me the idea that these long, drawn-out pregnancies would have a great deal of effect on the woman's psyche. And so Sig, for the next several chapters, is going to be acting a little goofy, a little weird, a little more than normal as her body begins adjusting to being pregnant. In this book, we get the first mention of Lady Kylos of Blanchford. Sig saying, let's have a girl next time. And elder women, especially Silver Tech females, can pick their child, check their gender at pretty much at conception. They can also kind of pick how they want their child to be, what features they want them to manifest. So when Kay is born 2 years from now, he has purple hair, so he has a mixture of Captain Davidge's blue and Sig's red. So you get purple. Lady Kylos they wanted her to be a more traditional Vith. So when she is born, she's born with all the Vith features, the icy blue eyes, she has kind of whitish blue hair, very typically Vith, and Sig can pre-select these things at the moment of conception. And they do, in fact, name her Lady Kylos of Blanchford in honor of Lieutenant Kylos. And the two couldn't be more different as Lady Kylos grows up to be a socialite. She enjoys blues society. She enjoys parties, endurocons, these parties that never end or have no set end. She plays Perlamum. She gossips with her friends. She is very much a socialite, which is quite the opposite from the tomboyish, up and down, hard drinking, heart on her sleeve Lieutenant Kylos, who never really made much of a study of any of that. In any event, we are done with that chapter. We see the Marines trying to get another Marine installed, and they want to meet up with the Seeker and come aboard. And Carbomier mentions we want to come abeam. Now, abeam in naval terminology usually means the center of the ship, but in League terminology, in my books, it means the front of the ship. Don't mix those terms. Not the same thing. And Captain Davidge also correctly assessed how the Marines treated Kai, where they outdrummed her, threw her in the brig, busted her down to private, and basically threw her out onto the dock and left her there. And he just sent a strong message to Lieutenant Carbomier. He's like, if I find out when I talk to Kai next time that these things have happened to her, I'm going to be really mad. So since the Marines really want another Marine to succeed Lieutenant Kylos, you can bet those words will have a strong effect. Possibly an immediate one. We shall see. Next chapter, Part 2, Chapter 7, The 11th Daughter. Now, the second part of the book is called The 11th Daughter, and we already know that Princess Vrock of the House of Xandar is the 11th daughter of the House of Xandar, the cursed one, the sad one. But she's not the only 11th daughter in this book. There's another one whose life is very different, having not grown up on Xandar. So we will investigate that more next week. Much longer chapter than this one. Until then, this is Ren Presents. I am your host, Ren. Peace out.